Welcome to the Make the Movie Already podcast. This podcast is for you otherwise busy creatives who can't seem to find the time to finish or start your passion project. Join me on this journey, however long it takes, to get it done. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Make the Movie Already. This is episode 10, and for those of you just joining us, I'll give you a little bit of background. My name is Maria Rios, and I call myself a friendly, frustrated filmmaker because I ran into some creative trouble with my first documentary film project. I just completely ran into a wall and couldn't find my way toward completing it. Like, I just really couldn't see how to make a story out of the footage that I'd taken, and made a ton of new filmmaker mistakes. And I decided to revisit the project with a different lens, a more educated lens, and I decided to share that process, what I'm actually going through and what I'm actually doing, with you out there in the podcast listener universe. So my goal is to share some productivity tips. Every now and then, I actually started the podcast that way. But moving forward, I'm going through my actual process and trying to make my process useful to you, maybe first-time filmmakers or other creatives who have gotten stuck. And kind of can't find your way through your project, or trying to figure out whether it's feasible, or you just kind of want to make time to start a new creative project. And if you're interested in documentary filmmaking, this actually might be something of interest to you. So welcome. So here we are. Again, episode 10, and I am dedicating it to correcting a newbie mistake. So today's episode is about how writing can save your story. So what was that newbie mistake? In short, the mistake I made was thinking that the interview questions would be enough to develop a story. And that's actually how I started the documentary. I started with a set of interview questions, and then I set up a studio interview with my subject, which yielded a bunch of amazing information. It was a decent interview. And after which I started to follow my subject, and I took footage of her at various events. And in that, at the end of the day, landed me stuck and really without a story. If you've been following the podcast, you'll know that I've spent the past few weeks on documentary pre-production, with an emphasis on research and writing. And this renewed, more intensive focus on documentary pre-production came after doing some research and doing the work that I needed to figure out that I certainly needed to spend more time digging deeper into what it meant to actually structure a story for documentary. So the efforts of the past few weeks have led to some realizations that I feel like I can share with you now, that will be hopefully helpful to you in your own processes, particularly if you're a new documentary filmmaker. And so here are the two lessons. That it's critical to connect your values as a filmmaker, to understand them, to know them, but to connect them to your story. And the second is writing in general, and writing with a plan in place will help you find your way if you're lost. Now, the first takeaway about connecting your values and discovering your values is directly related to the subject matter that I discussed in the previous episode about artistic identity. And so I actually want to say now that last week's goal was to directly connect artistic identity to the motivation for my film. And I can do that now. And I'm actually going to save that for later because I'd like to take a little bit of time to unpack what that process was like for me. The second takeaway, which is related to helping you find your way if you're lost, speaks to the fact that I am starting over with a project. I'm not sure anymore. I think it's was. I actually really do think it's was now. I was in a place where I had a bunch of footage that I couldn't make sense of. I couldn't get a story out of it. It just didn't make sense in my head. So I'm working independently to try and answer these questions, and I'm doing the research myself without a ton of input from the resources that I have, the people and filmmakers that I know that can probably offer some advice. I'm a creative with, as you know, Make the Movie Already is about. If you don't have a lot of time on your hands, sometimes it's really hard to connect with other people. And so this has turned into independent study. And, but for those of you that have experience starting over or understand the difficulty of that, I think this will be helpful to you in particular. All right, so let's get back to connecting to your values and what that means. And really, that's about knowing yourself as a filmmaker. As you know, I've been working through a couple of textbooks by Michael Rabiger, and I've been working the exercises dealing with artistic identity, and it's uncomfortable, as I've mentioned before, but I sat and answered a bunch of questions about myself. Personal questions about myself, personal questions about what's unfinished business in my life. What are things that I absolutely need to resolve? What do I believe in? All of these things that seem abstract, they might seem like a waste of time, but after a few pages and a couple of weeks of really intensive consideration, oh man, that was a game changer for me because I was able to clearly see connection points between myself and the subject that I hadn't seen before. But I really had to dig deep, and I actually really had to sit down and write beyond just the mere outline, right beyond just interview questions. Those are important things, but I'm actually really curious to see how this is going to affect the production of the film. I am very moved by this experience of connecting to myself and my motivations, because I learned that I do have the fortitude to complete the film. Filmmaking is expensive. It takes years. I was frankly still kind of, after all of these weeks and doing this podcast, I was still having concerns about feasibility. You know, the specter of insecurity kind of reared its head. And in really kind of taking a deeper dive into who I am and what motivates me as a creative person, and what are these things that are these marks in my life, as Rabiger talks about. What are these items that I really need to resolve? And lo and behold, I was able to name the feelings that I had that I couldn't quite articulate that would eventually define my motivations for the film. So do the work, dig deep, I'll leave you the references for Rabiger's work and maybe a couple of others that will help you do this work if you so choose. You could also listen to episode 8. I think I describe a little bit of what I did in detail, but you absolutely have to dig deep. So what did all of that introspection actually yield? As I promised, I got to some motivations that I have for doing this film, which I really couldn't articulate until I did this work. And so what I learned about myself actually is that there are some values, that are connected to possible themes of the film. And so these values are social justice, finding strength with words or art, connecting people is important to me, speaking truth, finding my voice at all costs. This is something that's important to me, and there's reasons for all of this. But these are things that kind of really resonate with me. And when it comes to my motivations for making this film, I'm motivated to make this film because I believe in the capacity of art to heal. I also believe we cannot forget our histories in a time that compels us to do it. I believe in her work as a labor of love in this era of polarization. Those are 3 motivations. I have a few more, but they're not quite ironed out, ready for prime time. But I think those 3 are good enough. I think they are lasting, that they will serve as lasting motivation for me to soldier on with this film. And that's all I need. That's really all you need as a documentarian. You got to have the source of the grit. Well, you need more than that, but you know what I'm saying. It's really important for you to be able to have the nourishment you need to continue on a project that could last for years, and that could be expensive, and that, et cetera, et cetera. So these 3 things I feel will get me there. You know, I'm proud to share these motivations with you because frankly, it took a really long time. This is episode 10, so it really, in this process, took 9 weeks to get to that. But it is worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it to me. It certainly is. So I feel like I can see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of finishing my project. So more to come there. All right. So let's talk about how writing will help you find your way if you're lost. It sounds a little cheesy, but I think it's worth just spending a couple of minutes on that because this is newbie filmmaker territory. This is exactly where I went wrong. Exactly. And I really needed to spend time and effort asking questions about my project that would allow me to be able to construct a story. And I think the key for being able to visualize, how a story could exist in a scene, or how a story could exist in a sequence, or how it could just exist when you're working on a project that's character driven and all of this is new and you have this pile of footage, and what are you going to do? Pen to paper with the right writing prompts really helped me get creative and be able to see. There was no amount of footage that was gonna help me here. I could have gone out and shot from here for the next 2 years and that would have made the problem worse. So writing now is part of my regular practice, and I have a ton of notes. I have some research that I've been working through. I even have a little diagram of a narrative arc that I'm completing and working through and trying to associate those words to images. I'm actually even journaling, and I am doing a dream journal. And I haven't been doing the dream journal for very long, but I'm in the dreams that I can remember, if you can believe it or not, I'm starting to see associations that are making sense to me. And well, I guess I should give you a little bit of a background on that. So when I was a kid, my mom and I, or my family on my mom's side in particular, we made a habit of sharing dreams, so we would talk about them. And every so often, to this day, I'll wake up and I'll share that dream with my husband or whoever's listening, so it's kind of been part of my practice as a human to do this. But I'd never really, kept a dream journal. And so that was one of Rabiger's recommendations that was the hardest for me to kind of start. But once I did, I almost just saw immediate kind of visual interest points and connections that was kind of surprising. So I'm feeling this whole the muck starting to clear, and I'm actually feeling quite hopeful in the project. And so moving forward, my plan is to take all of the information that I've shared today and that's in my notebooks and start to organize it in a way that leads to some solid and precise direction and strategy in terms of the actual film. I don't know how long this is going to take because, mind you, I'm also working on this podcast. As imperfect as it is, I'm trying to keep those two goals running together because this has been my lifeline towards solving my own problem here, and it's frankly been helpful to me. It's a way to kind of air my ideas and hopefully be helpful to you in the process. But all right. So thank you for listening to that. All right. So I think it's a good time to end. I've gotten through the 2 points that I wanted to make today about how writing can save your story. Writing is actually a critical component of documentary filmmaking. I am learning this by doing. I have quite a bit more writing to do, so this will keep me busy for a bit, but I am itching to start shooting, but I will not start filming until I have a strategy. I know that my filming strategy can change. I know that anything that I write about a documentary can change, obviously, in the course of shooting, but I'm not going in without a plan. And there is some fuzziness, obviously, in all of this, and I have some organizing to do, and I'm still in the process of collecting biographical information and interviews and just more information about my subject. So there is that, but I'm excited. I'm excited about moving forward and sharing that process with you. In the meantime, I will leave some resources that were helpful to me in in the little box in YouTube. So you'll see it in the little text box. You'll see it, with the description of this episode. And so I hope those will be useful to you. Thank you for your patience with my imperfection. I had a little bit of a challenging week this week. Time-wise, I was working through the weekend for sure. So I had fewer hours than normal to work on this project, but I think I made every minute count, and I hope you've taken something from my experiences. So to all of you 5 subscribers out there, I'm very grateful for you. Thank you. You keep me going. You really do. So I hope everyone is well. Y'all stay creative. I'm looking forward to the next episode. I'm looking forward to sharing more resources. Please feel free to reach out on my socials at Make the Movie Podcast. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Feel free to leave me comments in the comment section here. YouTube. I'm also on Anchor, Spotify. So I'll be here next week. Have a great week. And again, stay creative. Bye-bye.